Welcome back to episode 46 of the Her Advantage podcast. I am your host, Mel, and we talk all things fulfillment in our body, mind, and world. This is take 2 of this podcast. I recorded the entire podcast, and then when I went to edit it, realized that it cut out after 4 minutes. Now, I don't know if that's a sign that I should stop doing podcasts or solo podcasts. I never have problems when I'm recording with other people. It's just when I record myself, or whether it was just really testing me to be like, do you really want to talk about this topic? Who knows? If you're listening, you obviously wanted me to keep recording. So here we go. Today we are talking about finding our resources or using our resources. But before we dive into what I want to talk about today, because it's been a while since I hit record on a solo episode and had, some real good you and me time alone, that quality intimacy, I thought I would start with a little bit of a confession. So I would not put myself in the Swifty camp, but I have to say that one of her songs from her new album has definitely piqued my interest. Now, if any of you know me, if any of you know my taste in music, if any of you are Swifties, I would really love, I'm sure you know the song that I'm about to talk about. And if you don't, have a little bit of a think about it. But if you are not a Swiftie and you have no idea what I'm talking about, Taylor Swift has just released a new album, obviously in the middle of a world tour. And this clip came up on my social media last week around her conflict with Kim Kardashian. A couple of years ago, I don't know the whole details around it, but her and Kim have always had a challenging relationship. And the social media post was talking about how Kim has basically written a song about, the rumor is the song is about her. The song is called Thank You, Amy. Now, if you haven't heard it, pause this, go away and listen to it, because you're going to know why it has piqued my interest. And I think that if you are a Swiftie and you know this song, you're also going to be like, oh, of course, this is the song that Mel was talking about. But I want to read you a couple of lyrics. So basically the first line, or somewhere in the first, I don't even know what's the first paragraph of a song called. That's how much of a muso I am. But basically one of the lines is, I can't forget the way you made me feel. And it goes on to sort of talk about that, like I said, she really felt shit. She really hated it. She made it feel awkward in public. Like it was this really awful feeling that was coming up inside her. However, in the next time that this line comes around, the lyrics go, but I can't forget the way you made me heal. And holy shit, did I just have my whole body got so excited. Part of the really cool thing here is, I love songs. I love putting on an angry song. I love putting on a sappy love song or a, really girly song, all genres. But there's not a lot of self-reflection that happens in songs, and not a lot of positive influence that happens in songs. Typically, if we're listening to an angry song, we're tearing someone down or taking our power back. But there's really not a lot of songs that really allow us to come within and understand what's happening in our inside world and our outside world. But this song goes through, like I said, to really talk about how when Kim was really challenging her and quote unquote hurting her, it was an opportunity for her to go, fuck, why does this bother me? Why does this affect me the way that it is affecting me? And what the fuck can I do about it? And so then she went on this whole journey, obviously, of doing whatever Tay Tay does and becoming magnificent and obviously ruining our planet by flying around the world. But hey, she does it wearing sequins. The other really cool thing is we were talking in our business class the other night, and I'm part of this business mentorship, and one of the head coaches doesn't actually have social media. Well, she does, but she uses it very sparingly. And her argument is that she doesn't like publicly posting what's happening in her world, even if there's a vital lesson behind it, because she doesn't want to have to, if the time comes that she's changed her mind on something, as in a relationship or point of view, she hates having to explain it. So she has a little bit of I guess, fear around this sorts of stuff. And we were talking about how Taylor has obviously had a really public life, and she's had these massive challenges happen to her, and she then turns them into art. She uses them to her advantage to really make something of herself and understand herself, but also take the lessons that she's learnt to try and package them up and give them as a gift in somebody else's life so that they have a little bit of something that they can hold on to. And so watching that process and watching how this all unravels is so fucking inspiring and exciting. But also because, part of what I do and part of what we do on the podcast here is obviously try and show you that there's a bigger way of doing things. There's another way of doing things. If you are feeling stuck or hurt or misunderstood or whatever it is, there's always another way to look at something, and a way to look at something where we elevate each other, not put each other down. So that concludes my rant or my pitch about Tay Tay's new album. As I said, I promise you I'm not a Swiftie. I think I've listened to maybe 3 Taylor Swift songs in my entire life. We actually I went to uni in Bathurst and my parents were in Sydney, so when I would drive between Bathurst and Sydney, the girl that I would drive with loved like heavy metal and I didn't, so we would rotate between Taylor, like a couple of Taylor Swift songs, a couple of Luke Pickett songs, a couple of other artists, but it was this like typically heavy rock theme with like a couple of Tay Tay songs sprinkled in there. But what I wanted to talk to you about, like I said, we're naming this episode What Are My Resources? And part of the work that I've been doing recently is really having a look at, obviously, the women that I've helped, the women that I've worked with, the conversations that I have, the way that I treat my body, the way I think collectively we should treat our body. And it all comes down to the access that we have to resources and how we view our resources. Now, the year is 2024. So at some point in your life, you have dieted. At some point of your life, you have seen a health practitioner or a doctor or something to try and understand what is going on in your world to make things make sense. So when I say, what are your resources? Where does your mind automatically go? Do you go to food or a specific type of food? Do you go to exercise? Do you go to sleep? I think if you were really thinking about it, you would even include mindfulness in there. And none of those things are wrong. Those things are absolutely right. Well, they're starting to be, like, they're a piece in the puzzle. But it's how we use our resources together. Now, I know car analogies are so overdone, but when we think about the journeys that we make in our car, like, yes, obviously we need fuel, we need tread on our tires, we need oil, we need a destination to go to. Hopefully your like brake pads are working really well. Like all of these things come together so that we collectively have a car that can go on the road to do the things and go to the places. So how can we bring our resources together to take us places? So yeah, like I said, resources are essentially the things that we have and the things that we can pull together to take us somewhere. And it doesn't matter the terrain that we go on. So we can go on unsealed or sealed roads, but when we can bring them together, we're actually going to go somewhere. Luckily for us, our resources, unlike petrol, unlike oil, our resources are 100% renewable. And the way that we look at this is obviously when we look at, we can talk about longevity, but it's more than that. Like when we talk about the resources that we need to pull in to make ourselves feel the best that we have, to make our bodies make sense, to go where we want to go, these resources are 100% renewable. So we look at fuel, obviously. So what we're putting into our body, we look at what we're expecting our body to do, and we're also looking at the environment in which our body is in. So these 3 things play a pretty big role in the resources that we pull together. When you think of leveraging the resources that you've already got. Like I said, you have probably been to health practitioners, doctors, you've done your own research, you've dieted before. When you look at the resources that you've already got and that you've already learned, how can you pull the pieces together to start making sense of the way that your body works? Now, the way that we teach it inside Her Advantage, there's obviously a set of basics and foundations that we go to so that you start to have an understanding of where your energy sits, where your sleep sits, where your food sits, and start to put the pieces together so that you can already leverage the things that are working for you. We're not trying to scrap everything and start again, like, you know, most 6-week or 12-week plans when you put the blinkers on and they just want you to go really hard at this particular program. We're trying to put everything together so that you can, every time you have a life change, every time you have a stress change, you know the resource that needs to change or be altered so that you can leverage your other resources. Another way of looking at this is, say you are going through a period of really shitty sleep, and you know that sleep is an issue, that you're, you know, obviously not getting the rest that you need of a nighttime. So how can you leverage what you do throughout the day to, one, support that you have better sleep, but also pretty much take on the load from you having a resource missing from your puzzle? Like, if you're not sleeping properly, how can you leverage the food that you eat? How can you leverage the way you move? How can you leverage the way that your inner head and your inner voice talks to you? It's also a really good chance to obviously practice compassion. You know, I'm pretty sure that if any of us were talking, if we all, every single person that was listening to this podcast, sat down in a group and said, fuck, I'm really struggling with this at the moment, not one person would sit there and go, you just need to work through that. You just need to push harder. You would sit and go, hey, that really sucks. You know, is there any way that I can support you? How can we change what's happening to get the best out, get the best results for you? Imagine if we flipped that script and that's the way we spoke to ourselves. Another really cool example is if you are going through a really high emotional stress period, if you've got a hectic deadline with work, if you have a really cool project that you're working on, maybe the kids are causing you a bit of stress. And I think I just really downplayed that, you know, just like a bit of stress, because I think we all know that kids are like the things that run most of our lives, and they can be fur babies or real babies. But how can we look at the rest of our resources to go, this is the season of life that I'm in, and how can I alter that accordingly? So you might not be able to eat as regularly as you like. You might not be able to get the movement in that you like. You might not be able to, you know what, understand what's happening in your mental world right now. But if you can understand, like, hey, one of these resources is lacking at the moment, how can I leverage everything else that I do to fully support what's happening until I have the capacity to put the other resource back into play, or, you know, when the next season of life rolls around? We want to know how to look after our body. We want to know how to put the things together that make us feel good and make our lives and bodies make sense, so that we don't have to keep like have to feel like we're stopping and starting. Again, all of the women that come through Her Advantage, they have we go through these cycles of like ebbs and flows, but not one of the women that I have worked with has ever gone back to the beginning, has ever had to start again and start from scratch, because the shit that they put in place allows them to get to a certain level until the next challenge comes along. And it's like peeling an onion, and they like, cool, what is the next piece, or what's the next resource that we have to learn to manage to get to the next step? We're looking to get results that last. We're not looking to manage. We're not looking to cure. We're looking to live the life we want for the rest of our lives, not just in this short period of time. You know, most of us know how to diet. We've been fucking doing it for most of our lives. Most of us know how to eat healthy. But again, typically when we do that, we're limiting one of our resources and expecting more out of the others. We have to know how our resources work together so that we can get the most out of them. You know, again, if we're going to use the car analogy, if you've got no tread on your tires but fuel in your tank, it's going to be pretty hard to drive on when it's raining outside. And if you do, please, drive with caution in that situation. Or, if you are, I think I need my steering wheel fluid replaced at the moment, and I'm feeling a little bit nervous about it. But, every time I get in the car, it's the thing that I think about. It's the thing that I worry about. It's the thing that's like absorbing most of my attention. And honestly, then I'm not probably fully present with what's happening on the road because I'm fucking panicking about what's happening with my car. Panicking is a little bit of an overstretch, but you know what I'm saying. My mind is like not fully thinking about the task at hand. And it's the same with our resources. When we know how to leverage our food, when we know how to leverage our exercise, when we know how to leverage the rest of the shit that's happening in our life, our body starts to make sense, and you can show up in a way that makes you passionate and excited and inspired and involved. So how can you leverage the resources that you have? How can you leverage what you've already learned, what you've already gathered in life, and what you are already doing to start making things make a little bit more sense? I am going to leave that question with you. If you have any answers, or if any of these points that I've spoken about today have resonated with you, I would love to know your takeaways. Or if you found this podcast useful and you think a friend might like to hear it, shoot them the link and tell them to have a listen. Every share and follow in this podcast helps me do what I do and helps me bring more inspiring conversations in. Until next time, I will see you soon.